Hi everyone, and welcome back to Advancing with Watercolor. I'm Gary Tucker. In this series, we're going to be looking at skies and looking at the sky in different types of light, under different weather conditions, and so forth. This week, we're looking at a short series on developing a scene based on twilight or the gloaming. And we're starting off this week with a short drill that looks at graded washes and how we can create the effect of a setting sun or rising sun using a graded wash. That's how we're going to start. In the future weeks, we're going to develop a tonal study and finally a full color painting of this scene. So let's pick up our brushes and head over to the watercolor table. Is the transparent nature of watercolor, and part of that is the graded quality, the soft, slow transitions. So we're going to try a warm-up to get ready for our painting today. We call this a drill or any sort of exercise that allows us to completely give all of our attention to what's happening with the media. In other words, we're not trying to follow an image or a scene or paint along, but we're simply trying to understand a technique. The technique that we're going to work with today is a graded wash. And we're going to practice this in a couple ways. One way is to, let's try with a single color first of all. Let's pick up ultramarine blue. Imagine we're painting the blue sky with a sun or a moon. You see, I'm using a large brush. I'm diluting the color in the palette, adding a lot of water. I've drawn a circle on my paper, and this is going to be my sun or my moon. And I'm going to just simply create a wash going from a dark to a light. This being the horizon, this being the upper part of the sky. I'm going to start with the darker aspect of this blue. This is ultramarine blue, as I said. I'm just going straight across the paper. We can do this with any color. It does help to have some strength to the color. In other words, if we do this with a very pale yellow, it's not going to look as dramatic. As we bring this down, I'm adding a little bit of water to it. You see, I go to the water, pick up a little bit of water, mix it into the pool of color. So now I want to kind of cut around my shape. So I'm doing that very loosely, right? I'm not trying to get precise yet. And then I'm just going to take water, only water, mix it with the color. And here's our very rudimentary, basic wash. It's very wet. Very wet right now. I'm going to keep it wet so I can manipulate it by using my spray bottle. Taking a smaller brush so that I can work around this object a little more, get a better shape. Then we can start to manipulate this a little bit. Let's take some water here, add it to our blue, and start to, we've got our sun, our moon well defined. We can start to manipulate the graded wash a little bit. I'm going to add a medium strength through here and gradually use gravity and manipulate the paint so that we get a softer, smoother transition. Right. And some time is spent in just watching the wash move, making sure it's going to have a little dark right up here, stronger, thicker color. This brush can be a little deceptive because it carries a lot of liquid to the page. So even if we have to be careful how much paint we have in the brush when we're picking it up, right? If we come at it now with a very dry color, it's going to stay relatively stable. If we have a lot of pigment on the brush, it's going to just basically wash away what we've done. So it's drying pretty well. You see it's still very, very wet. How shiny it is, right? It's very shiny. And sometimes we want to manipulate the wash a little longer. We can do that. If the page is very wet like it is right now, we can continue to manipulate that. It's when it starts to dry, just putting a little bit of water into this to make it a little lighter towards the bottom. It's when it starts to lose that shine that we have to be really careful, because the pigment is starting to settle and starting to tighten. And this is, if we work into it in this state, when it's starting to lose its shine, then that's when we get accidentals or things that we don't really want in our painting. So when your wash starts to look as you want it to look, then it's time to kind of flatten it out and let it dry. But until that point, you can continue to manipulate it. Continue to make it look more and more like you want it to look. And the result is we get this very subtle, soft transition of color, which for an empty sky, a sky that has no clouds or anything in the sky other than this moon or sun, it's the sort of transition that we see the most, where it's really changing very gradually and going from a lighter color to a darker color, or from a blue to a pink or something like this. I'm going to bring it down a little more. Continue to manipulate that until I'm pretty satisfied with the way the sky looks. And then, like I said, I'll flatten it out and let it dry. So this is a graded wash with the complication of painting around an object. In this case, our sun or moon. And this effect of darker at top, lighter towards the bottom, creates almost a shape to the sky, or sort of a dome type quality. Right? So let's let this dry, and then we'll do a second one. Just gonna let it come down there. All right. Well, this is dried pretty well. It's still kind of damp, but you see how the graded wash is dried. Very soft transition using a single color, cutting around an object. We're going to add a little complication now by using two colors. Let's clean out our brush well. We're still going to use that ultramarine blue, but we're going to start everything off with a little bit of yellow ochre. Let's go a little weaker. More water. Start to cut around our object of moon or sun or asteroid. Could be anything. And water. So here we have a pretty flat application. Not much gradation. Let's put a little bit of color through here. Right through here. Let it drift down. Like this. And let's pass some blue through this. So blue is maybe coming at a little bit of an angle, right? Let's try that. I'm going to use this flat brush because it carries a little less pigment to the paper. Oops, picked up something here. Oh, that's okay. I don't mind if it's a little grayer. I don't know what's under there. No, some sort of reddish hue. Okay. Need to be a little careful. Put out some fresh paint. Well, let's keep this wet. Put up a little bit of ultramarine blue. Don't need a lot. Those are the kind of things you want to avoid because this is sort of based on timing. Here we go. All right. And let's just do a touch to see what it does. Doesn't move so much, does it? Okay. We can really do anything here. I want to create this sort of twilight effect. A little more blue. And I'm going to use a smaller brush and work a little closer to the object here. When I pick up a pigment though, I don't want to pick up too much liquid, so I keep my paper towel handy. Mix it in. And we can do the same sort of manipulation. Basically, what we're doing is letting watercolor, the media, sort of do the work for us. So you see some parts here, I let the blue come forward, dominate, some parts the yellow. Two colors. There might be a third because the blue seemed a little contaminated. But it creates a very, atmospheric quality. Part of that is the transparent nature of watercolor. And part of that is the graded quality, the soft, slow transitions. All of that is kind of working together to give us this more atmospheric quality to our sky. Right now, the moon itself or the sun itself feels sort of flat, like it's been cut and pasted onto our painting. I think the time to manipulate that is after this dries. Basically what we'll do is we'll come to some of these edges and soften them. So this is a variation with two colors where we start to become a little more atmospheric. These could be clouds or a sort of twilight that's descending on the scene. And these sorts of studies where we're using, kind of working based on our imagination are a great exercise. Let me put a little color here. Just manipulate it a little bit. A little more like twilight, like the cool of the night is starting to move into the scene. Still a little warmth left. This expression is much more complex than this expression. So what happens when we dry this off and return to the object in the middle there at the sun moon? Let's try that. I'm going to dry this off. Okay, it's not completely dry, but for experiment's sake, it's okay. Let's take a little bit of blue here and just kind of put it right in the center there. And sort of soften the edges of our moon that way. It's definitely become more of a moon now than a sun with that cool color. It's a little better. But just adding that little bit of color and adjusting these edges. Pushes that moon into the atmosphere, makes it feel more like a little bit of a cloud is moving over it. And so this object now is within the atmosphere. Compare the two and you see a big difference. So a couple points here: controlling the graded wash through gravity, turning the painting, shaping it with darker pigment. A more advanced version of a graded wash where we're using that second color to kind of create a little disturbance or a feeling of front and back, and then adjusting our object, in this case, this round moon, to fit in the atmosphere. And those are things that we're going to use in our image today.